All right, so if you've already done the labs and bounced around between practitioners, tried the diets and the supplements, and been more of an advocate for yourself, that you probably should have to, and you still don't have a clear explanation of why you feel the way you feel, this is for you. This is for the person who's genuinely put in the effort and is starting to wonder if something else entirely is being missed. And look, if you're skeptical, I get it. And I'd expect that. Most of the people who find my work have already been through multiple rounds of conventional care, maybe some functional medicine, a pile of supplements, all the dietary changes, and even some nervous system work and beyond. And they've come out the other side with just more information, but not a lot of clarity and, most importantly, progress. Some of them actually tell me they were nervous to book an initial call because they were afraid. And I'm quoting here that there wouldn't be anything wrong with me, meaning they'd already been told so many times that everything looked fine, and they'd started to believe it themselves, even when their life and their symptoms clearly said otherwise. So I want to be straightforward with you here. I'm not here to oversell anything. I'm here to explain how I think and let you decide if it matches what you're looking for in your healing journey. Here's the core of what I've seen working with complex cases over the years. Most people with unresolved or complex symptoms are not missing effort. They're missing the right and full interpretation of their experience. And let me say that a little bit more carefully. They have symptoms, labs, diagnoses, opinions from multiple practitioners, and a shelf of things that they've tried. They have bits and pieces of information, and often a lot of them, but no one has assembled it fully for their case. No one has taken their entire lived story, the timeline, the patterns, the history, what was happening when things changed, and what has been tried, and why it did or did not help, and read it as a single connected picture. And so they stay stuck, not because they haven't done enough, but because the thinking applied to their case stopped before it needed to. That's the gap that my work is designed to close. So let me walk you through why the usual or typical options tend to fall short. When you do what most people commonly do, you get what most people commonly get. And I want to be clear that this problem is structural and societal in many ways. And so you have to be the little salmon swimming upstream sometimes. A 15-minute appointment, for example, cannot hold a 10-year symptom history or experience. A standard blood panel was designed to catch stark disease. And when that's what you need, it works brilliantly sometimes. But when you're not flagged for a diagnosable condition, the system often has no good next move. You get told everything looks normal, or maybe a referral, maybe a prescription, and none of that explains why your life doesn't feel like it's your own. Normal is not the same as optimal, and it's not the same as complete. That's a structural limitation of the model that we live in today. Not a personal failure of any single person, but the system. Now, here's the part a lot of health and wellness content won't also say clearly. The wellness world sees that failure accurately as well, and then it makes a different version of the same mistake. Instead of evaluating the case and the entire person, it starts adding things. Gut protocols, hormone hacks, supplement stacks. Everyone has mold, detoxes, nervous system regulation, as though that's the answer to everything. And a lot of the root cause language out there sounds like deeper thinking, but it's still, at its core, chasing symptoms, just with a more natural sounding vocabulary. One of my patients told me before she found my work that she was nervous it was just going to feel like another MLM or Herbalife or something similar. And I understand why she felt that way, because a lot of functional leading wellness content out there can start to feel like the appearance of depth without enough actual reasoning underneath. Here's where I need to go one level further as well, because I think functional medicine itself can fall into this. Advanced labs are not automatically better thinking. I can order a Dutch test or a comprehensive stool test or an organic acids panel, and if I'm not interpreting how those patterns connect to this specific person's history and clinical picture, I'm still just doing symptom level work. It just uses a more sophisticated vocabulary, and it's often more expensive. I had a patient come in who had already done functional testing with another provider. She had a long supplement protocol based on those results, and she didn't know why she was taking most of them. Nobody had actually sat down with her and explained how the patterns connected. That is not personalized care. That is just a standardized algorithmic protocol dressed up as such. A supplement plan can be natural, but not be individualized. That's the distinction that matters. Different tools, but the same shallow algorithmic logic. That's what I built this work to move away from. And the difference comes from deep conviction here. And I want to slow down here for a second because I think the cost of staying stuck in this pattern gets underestimated. It's not just the symptoms. It's the fact that your body starts to feel unpredictable. You stop being able to plan around it. You organize your life into smaller circles, saying no to things, family, friends, managing your flares, conserving your capacity that you're not even sure that you have. And eventually, a lot of people just turn inward and start blaming themselves. They think maybe I'm too sensitive, or maybe I'm doing something wrong, or just need to try harder, stress less, or be more disciplined. And that's a brutal place to land. Because if the approach has been incomplete from the beginning, your lack of progress is not proof that you failed. It's proof that the level of thinking applied to your case didn't match the complexity of what you're actually dealing with. The people I work with are not lazy people. They are not in their heads and they are not dramatic. They are thoughtful people who have often been handed fragments of explanations and told that the fragments are and should be enough. So that's why I had to build this process and this way of thinking differently. I didn't build this because I just wanted a branded program. I built it because I see the same kind of person fall through the cracks in healing. Thoughtful people, health-aware people, high-functioning, efficient people who were doing everything they were told to do, and they're still walking away from appointments with explanations that didn't match what they were actually living. I've always been uncomfortable with systems that ask people to comply before they understand. That has just never sat right with me in medicine or anywhere else. And I don't like when authority decides which questions people are allowed to ask or which options they're allowed to consider, health included. When I chose a non-traditional path into medical education, it required stepping outside of a lot of accepted frameworks. And what that experience gave me was the ability to see where a model stops, rather than assuming that a model is always complete. And to be honest about something else, I've been on the other side of this personally too. I know what it's like to follow the guidance, do the work, and still end up in the same place, with no better explanation than when I started. That experience didn't make me cynical necessarily, but it made me more precise about what I was actually looking for in my own healing, and now what I apply to my patients. At some point in my clinical work and pretty early on in my Chinese medicine education, the question I kept coming back to was, why does someone's energy, their digestion, their mood, their sleep, and their ability to recover all shift around the same period in their life oftentimes and get treated as 5 separate problems in our conventional paradigm? If those systems were all adapting at the same time, something changed in the terrain that set that off. Sometimes that's stress physiology and chemistry, sometimes it's gut inflammation, blood sugar instability, nutrient depletion, immune activation, hormone signaling, boom, I'm just going to name the whole list of things. But more often than not, it's several of those things interacting together. That's the question worth asking and actually diving deeper into. Not which of these symptoms do we target first or which specialist should we see first, but what changed in the overall system and the terrain, and what does that pattern actually mean? And then how do we support it? That shift in thinking is what the Sleuth and Solve system is built around. Not more interventions, but a better investigation. To get different answers, you have to ask different questions. The Sleuth and Solve system is a structured 3-month root cause investigation. Not a program, not a wellness plan, an investigation. The goal is to gather your clues, decode your patterns, and to build a clear, sequenced strategy around your actual physiology, so that whatever you do makes sense in the context of who you actually are. Not a trending protocol applied to everyone, black and white, not a standard template, your case investigation. And by the end of this video, if this way of thinking feels aligned with what you've been looking for, I'll invite you to apply for what I call my Health Mystery Map call. It's a second opinion style conversation to see whether your case needs this level of investigation and whether or not we're the right fit for working together. So here's what the system looks like in practice. Step 1, on the case. Before we try to fix anything, we need to understand what's actually been happening over your lifetime. That means your full story, when things changed, what was going on around that time, what you've tried and how your body responded over the years, what's been tested, and what those results actually mean in your context. Most of my patients say that nobody has sat with their full timeline and looked at where it all connects. That's where we start. Step 2 is the Promethean decode. This is where functional labs, symptoms, and history start to get interpreted together, not as isolated numbers, but as a pattern. I use testing like organic acids, advanced hormone panels, comprehensive stool and microbiome analyses, and others depending on the case, but not to generate a supplement list, but rather to map where your systems are under strain and how that connects to your story that we've already built in step 1. More data is not necessarily more clarity. Better interpretation is. Step 3 is my 3T precision plan. This is the importance of sequence, and it's where we don't just hand you a stack of things to take without explanation or consideration to order. T number 1 is targeted, and this means recommendations that match your physiology and your objective lab data, not a symptom green pharmacy matching. The second T is therapeutic, which means the form, the dose, and the timing actually matter, because they do. And T number 3, perhaps my favorite, is temporary. Every support that we implement has a purpose and gets reassessed, not something you necessarily need to be on forever. People typically leave this process with fewer interventions and supplements than they came in to see me with, and that's by design. Here's a couple stories that are representative of my patient experience, and of course, being HIPAA compliant, the identifying information is removed. One of my patients came in with constant stomach pain that prevented her from running, showing up to work, and she said that she genuinely felt like giving up on feeling like herself again. She had been through multiple conventional practitioners and everything had come back normal. She'd been told that it was most likely stress. When we mapped out her full picture, what her labs actually showed in context, along with the timeline around when things shifted, the pattern underneath became more and more evident. She finally had an explanation that made sense. And within a few months of this 3T precision plan, the pain had nearly fully resolved for the first time in 18 months. She was running again, and she said that Dr. Kenny helped me get my life back. Not because we found some dramatic hidden diagnosis, but we interpreted the pattern at the level that it actually required, and there were stressors in her systems that needed targeted support. Another patient came in scared. Her specific fear, and I think this one's pretty common, was that there would be nothing wrong with her, mentioned earlier. She'd been dismissed enough times that she started to believe it herself. What happened instead is we ran tests that she had never had run before, and it gave us answers that no previous provider had found. She said that it was the first time that she did not feel alone in this process. That's the work. This tends to work best for a certain kind of person as well. Someone who has done their research, is skeptical of big promises, and values understanding, not just being told what to do. Someone who's willing to participate, track symptoms, complete labs, follow through on a sequence, and someone who wants clarity more than they want to try and cover things up. This is not the right fit for everyone. If you're looking for a quick protocol or passive care, this isn't it. And if you're mainly looking for the lowest cost next step, this probably won't feel like the right fit either. Not because cost doesn't matter, it does, but because this work requires time, interpretation, and a level of clinical attention that can't be compressed into fast recommendations. Thus, my sleuth and solve system. The people who do the best here are not looking for someone to rescue them. They're looking for someone who can finally see the whole picture and walk alongside them. If this way of thinking resonates with you, if the framing I've been using makes sense to you, and if you recognize yourself in the patterns I've been describing broadly, the next step is to apply for a health mystery map call. This is a focused second opinion style conversation where we look at what's been going on with you, what you've already tried, where things might be fragmented or stopped too early, and whether or not the sleuth and solve system is the right next step for your specific case. This is not a sales call, and it's not a traditional quick consult where I hand you general recommendations on the way out. The goal is to understand whether your case actually needs this level of investigation and whether we are genuinely aligned in how we would approach this together. I take a limited number of cases at a time as well, not because of manufactured scarcity out there, but because this work requires depth, and depth requires that space. If you're in one of the states that I'm licensed in, which is Described below, I'm ready to work with you directly as a patient. If you're elsewhere, we can discuss what that might look like as well if you're able to travel. The button below this video takes you to the application. It asks you to describe your situation among other things. Take your time with it. The quality of your answers tells me a lot about how this conversation is going to go and about the right fit. Just remember that your body is not random. Your symptoms are not isolated. Your case has likely not been fully interpreted yet. And that distinction matters because the right level of investigation changes what your next step actually is. That is what this work that I do is for. So apply for your health mystery map call. I look forward to speaking with you.